Hi, Kevin. Welcome to the Impact Revolution channel. Thank you so much for coming. How you doing?
I'm doing great, Yoshi. Thank you for having me.
No, my absolute pleasure. So, as we discussed, Kevin, we're going to start with a couple of questions that are a bit personal, if that's okay with you. And then we can then later go with the professional question. Is that okay?
Sounds great.
All right, cool. So, first one will be, Kevin, if you could wake up anywhere in the world, where it will be and why?
I would wake up on the moon
Oh, all right,
because
cool.
just to get that perspective of our planet and the Earth, and I wanted to be an astronaut when I was a kid, so I think that that would be a cool place to wake up. I have terrible motion sickness, so I would not pass being an astronaut, but if I could just wake up on the moon, I would do that.
Well, maybe in the future we can have such kind of vehicles, right? Elon Musk is
Yes.
working on this stuff, so maybe one day will be simpler. All right, very cool. That's a very interesting answer. Second question, Kevin. Someone who really admires you and knows you very well, how we will define or how we'll say who is Kevin Kwoka?
Oh, that's you're making me like brag about myself.
Uh-huh, that's it.
I would say someone that admires me and knows me well would say I'm a very caring person, a very funny and outgoing, and always want to make people laugh, but still a very hard worker.
Uh-huh.
And my wife would probably say that I don't let stress get to me. Um, I'm someone that if I have control of the situation, I'll worry about it and fix it or change
Uh-huh.
it. And if I have no control, there's no sense in worrying. So pretty laid back.
Uh-huh. All right, very good. Actually, it's something I felt from you. You are always smiling, you are always kind of relaxed. So I was wondering, where is this mindset coming from, Kevin?
I think I've reflected on it a couple times, and
Uh-huh.
my belief is that we don't know what's after this life. All I know is I'm here right now, and so I want to make the most of it. And so every interaction I have, I want to make it memorable. I want to leave people feeling good. That doesn't mean avoiding tough conversations, but
Uh-huh.
life's too short to be unhappy or to choose. I believe that we have the ability to choose how we react in
Uh-huh.
situations, and so I just choose to be on the positive side.
Very good. All right, thank you. Well, I'm an international performance coach, so definitely I believe in that. We have the right to choose and we have the power to choose, right? Very
Yes.
good. Thank you. So, now regarding your work, I see that you work on the talent acquisition, right, in this tech company, a startup. So I was wondering, what are the main challenges that you face on this world of recruiting, Kevin?
I think it asking me now versus asking this question last year or 2 years ago, it would be a very different answer. I
Okay.
believe that the challenges of a startup when you're 20 employees, uh, your first hires in certain departments are going to set the tone and the culture for that department. So the early hires are really important. Also,
Mm,
having people that have the mindset of a startup, where you're wearing multiple hats, doing things outside of your job description, that's really important in those early days.
uh-huh. Totally, yeah.
Given
Understand.
all the challenges of the pandemic and the shift of work from home, the crazy talent market last year, where people could not hire enough and the competition for talent was very difficult, uh, was a big challenge. This year, the market has shifted. I believe we don't have to move as quickly with candidates. That doesn't mean that we're not fast to move. But last year, we would talk to a candidate, and within a week, they would have 4 offers. And we wouldn't sacrifice our interview process, which is, I believe, both ways, the company interviewing the candidate. and the candidate interviewing the company. We wouldn't sacrifice that for speed in order to fill a role, so it did make it difficult. Uh, I'd say this year, it's the challenges are on understanding all those shifts that have happened the past 3 years, and
Mm.
kind of getting to it. Are we at a stable point, or are things going to shift again?
It sounds very exciting, isn't it? It's like you're winning a roller coaster for the past
Yes,
3 years, right?
yes, yes.
All right, you didn't get bored for sure. All right,
No.
I wanted to ask you before you say something that I quite didn't get. It was about sacrificing quick hires, something like that. Did you say?
Yeah, sacrificing our hiring process
Mm-hmm.
for the sake of getting a role filled or not losing a candidate because other
Mm.
companies were moving fast.
All
Um,
right, sure. And
and
how did
and
you
for
do
us,
that, basically, Kevin?
so through very structured interview process defined ahead of time of
Uh-huh.
who each interviewer is going to be, what questions they'll be asking. But that doesn't mean that we aren't quick to book the next
Sure.
interview right away. So there are times where we could do five, if it's a 4 or 5 round interview process, we could get that done in a week and a half, but we aren't going to skip an interview step
I see, I
to
see.
make it
Okay, so
short.
you compromise some of the steps in order to get it quicker, yeah, to
Yeah,
get the hire
yeah.
quicker. Okay, I see the point. Very good, very interesting. I was curious, because this is all about culture, culture fit, and getting the right people, right, in your team. So, especially, I'm interested in the early stage where you say that they are the drivers of the culture, right? And they're going to set the tone for everybody. So, how do you manage those early stages of the hiring process, Kevin?
So in our, are you asking early stage of at GRIN, like when we were 20, 30
Yes.
employees? Okay. So I joined, we're about 20 employees. And one of the questions in my interview of the founders was, what is your culture? What is your vision? What are your core values? And it was something that they hadn't thought of, but I could tell they got really excited about. And
Uh huh.
so when I started, it was my first tech company, so I interviewed everyone in the company to understand what their roles were: software
Hmm.
engineer, customer success, sales, but also to get a feel for what is the culture, even though it's not a defined or written out core values. What are those commonalities in those early hires that then we could define? And so I worked with our founders and outside consultant and quite a few employees for 4 or 6 months to define those core values and then make sure everyone was aligned with them and understood them. And then as we hire, we filter using our core values. And so as a company, it was first being intentional and defining, and then knowing what to look for in hires. And I think there's a difference between culture fit and culture add. So culture fit, some people might think is everyone needs to be the exact same. I
Hmm.
think that there's a need for a foundational commonality. So at GRIN, that is people that are humble, that take ownership, that are that want high accountability, and that collaborate. We don't waver on those. So if there's someone that's high ego or does not take ownership, ideally our recruiting team will not push them through the process. So I think that's where the culture fit is. And then there's a culture add of those different lived unique experiences,
Uh
whether
huh.
it's socioeconomic, education, nationality, gender, race, sexual identity. Those are our culture adds, I believe.
Oh, that's very interesting. Yeah, it makes sense, right? So there are some values that you don't compromise, and then there are others that there are additions that they can empower and make things better, right? By
Right.
having something different. Very good. Okay, very nice. And what are your main lessons learned, would you say, from this experience, from the whole process, from this roller coaster that you have experienced?
one of the big experience or things I've learned is enjoy the ride. Like,
And you're right. Yeah. Okay.
you know, for me, for in those that are part of startups, have been part of startups, there's evolutions and different phases, and it moves a lot quicker than you realize. And so there is no stability, especially in business, but especially in the startup land. And so enjoying where you're at and not taking it for granted. Leaning into the challenges. There's a lot of challenges. It could be a lot of whiplash, and it's all a journey in your own personal development. And so
Uh,
I think for me, it's finding a company, finding a group of people that are all working on the same thing that align with your values and who you are and can make you better as well, you know?
uh-huh. Uh-huh. Totally, totally. Yeah. And what about now? What are the challenges, Kevin, that you are facing in terms of the recruitment or in terms of the culture in your case?
I think on the recruiting side, in my world, there's so much new technology, recruiting
Mm,
tech, that I'm really interested in looking into what those are. But there's so many startups. AI is really big right now, right? Web 3.0,
mm,
automating sourcing, automating using AI for candidate outreach and basically interviewing, and you never even have to talk to somebody to get them to accept an offer. And I think that it's all very interesting, and there will be technology woven into the recruiting side, but I'm hesitant to take out the human aspect of it because at the end of the
mm,
day, we are humans working together. And so where is that line going to be? So I'm very interested in learning just about recruiting tech and building out tech stacks. Um,
uh-huh.
on the culture side, I think challenges your culture is a breathing organism. If you're not focused on it, it's not going to improve. And so it has to be at the forefront of who you are as a company. And cultures can change over time. They probably should change over time. The type of culture at 20 people is different than 400.
Mm-hmm.
And so being intentional with that, intentional with who you are hiring and how that
Mm-hmm.
is going to impact and change the culture. And if you understand and think that it's going to impact it and move it in this direction and you're okay with that, that change is fine. But for companies or groups that aren't intentional about culture, it there's going to be some type of culture there, whether you're
Mm,
intentional or not. Um,
sure. Uh-huh.
it's going to be a lot better if you're intentional.
Very good. And how you are intentional right now with that kind of mindset, Kevin?
Ooh, that's a good one. I would say making sure that the interviewers, especially hiring interviewers, the leaders, we know what each of them are looking for. We know that the gaps in the team and the different personalities, and then hiring to help grow that and fill in maybe some gaps because no hire is going to ever have 100% of everything you need.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and for GRIN, we follow the V2 Mom, which it was started by Salesforce. So vision, values, methods, obstacles, and measures. And what I found interesting and really enjoy about that is the each year you set your V2 Mom as a company and then department and it trickles down. But the values can change.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have to change every year, but it's something that is looked at every year. And so you can reevaluate and reprioritize the importance of those values. An
Mm-hmm.
example, when we first got started, when I joined 4 years ago, a value was take action, move fast, because we were small, scrappy, new space, new industry. We had to move quickly. Over time, as we grew, that core value was hindering our performance instead of building on it. And so it did get removed, and at other values were added. So that's just one example of kind of your intentional culture developing and evolving over time.
That's very interesting. It makes a lot of sense, because as the organization and the teams and the priorities changes, right? You need to adapt to this new reality and new environment, right? Because the clients also maybe demand something different. Yeah, that's cool. Thank you for sharing that. And what do you think it will be next for you, Kevin?
Next for me, I love GRIN. I want to see this through. I think it's really a unique opportunity to join from a pre-seed company through the goal of an IPO.
Uh-huh.
So I am buckled in for this ride. But professionally, where I really am working with my leaders on, and personally, is like I want to be the best director of TA possible. A lot of what I've done the past 4 years, I've been learning as I go
Uh-huh.
and building and creating, and some was good, some was terrible, most was not good. So learning. So I want to just develop and learn from others in the space that have done it before. How to manage a team, manage your own performance, metrics, um, driving business outcomes, showing the value that talent acquisition brings to the company, and not just being a cost center. And then as well as all the recruiting technology,
Hmm.
there's some really cool stuff out there. Um, and just evaluating that and seeing how it all goes together.
All right, very nice. This is like becoming a HR business partner kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
uh, all right. How are you planning to do so, Kevin?
So I've started expanding my network.
Uh-huh.
There's a group of startup TA leaders that I participate in that meets monthly.
Uh-huh.
Slack channels. I'm always open to networking and having conversations with
Uh-huh.
other people in the space, learning their background and experiences. Um, and so putting myself out there to not network for like my next opportunity, but network to grow and learn.
Uh-huh.
And then there's some leaders at GRIN that have quite a bit of experience and exposure to where I want to develop into. So I'm leaning into that.
All right. What are your main lessons learned from those interactions so far, Kevin?
Biggest one is wherever you want to go, whatever you want to do, someone's been there before. So you don't
Mm-hmm.
have to recreate the wheel and start from scratch. So asking asking questions, having that humility to be vulnerable in what you don't know
Uh-huh.
has been a big lesson
Mm-hmm.
versus, well, I've been here 4.5 years. I was the first recruiter. I could very much be like, I know it all, right? Or I will figure it out on my own. But no one is self made. Everyone has had support around them. And so
Totally, yeah.
that's a big one.
Definitely, yeah. All right, very good. About driving business performance and success, what would you say could be the key?
From the talent acquisition side,
Yes, from the what you want to do, right? As
yeah.
a partner, as a director. Mm-hmm.
So I think it starts with tying what we do in recruiting, which is helping hire people,
Mm-hmm.
to making sure that the on the financial side of the business, there's great communication from a
Mm-hmm.
when when hires will be made, when they're needed, when headcount plans are set, having talent acquisition as part of that to say, that's great, you want to hire 30 people next quarter, but not all 30 are going to start on September 1st, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so having all those conversations before we get started, and then that way the recruiting team can go. And then the two big metrics I hold myself and my team to are hires on time. So did we hit the start date that we the business agreed to that we needed this position by, and then are they on budget, in budget, because
Mm-hmm.
that's on the business side, on the finance side, that's what we said we could spend. So if we're filling roles on time and in budget, we're, I feel, meeting the needs of the business. And there's all the conversations that have to happen in there. As well as throughout the interviewing process or hiring process, things can change. We have had roles that the need shifts based on other things going on in the business.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so being in tune myself with the different VPs and leaders in the org of knowing what that might happen before it does need to get pulled or shifted has been
Mm,
important.
yeah, sure. And that sounds like a challenging task, right, Kevin?
Yes, yes, it is.
Yes, I was wondering, like, how do you navigate those interactions, right? Because it's about communication, it's about expectations, right? It's about budgeting, right? Which is something that is forecasting that maybe turns to be right or turns to be wrong. So, what are the biggest challenges that you have to face, and what have you learned from them, Kevin?
So in the beginning, I would meet with the department leads when we were relatively small and on
Yes.
a regular basis to understand headcount need, any potential attrition, those things. Now, if I did that now, that would be 3 full days a week doing that. So I have close partnerships and communication with our business partners who are then meeting with those leaders on a regular basis. And so I will ask about any potential promotions, anyone that's leaving, any potential attrition or role changes. And then I also meet with our finance, VP of finance and senior manager FP&A on a biweekly basis. Um,
Uh-huh.
and then there are some other leaders that I do meet with on a every 3 or 4 weeks, just to keep that communication open because things will change. Um, and we have a really informal kind of communication. We're we're big on Slack. Slack is how we communicate most of the time, but then
Right.
scheduled meetings, Zoom meetings.
It's good. It's like on the need basis, right? And whenever you
Yeah,
need someone, is there to talk and it's open. And all right, very good. And what did you find out that it makes these relationships simpler or easier, or something that you may have learned from those interactions, Kevin?
I think so. Some of the interactions and relationships I had when we were in office 3 years ago, since the pandemic, we've been fully remote, so that does bring a unique set of challenges.
Mm-hmm.
Building a relationship, never having met someone in person, but I think that it comes down to doing what you say you're going to do on both ends,
Mm-hmm.
um, to build that trust, to then know that we will deliver for each other what we say we will. Um, I think there's in this video meeting world, not just jumping into the meeting and saying, "All right, Yoshi, what what do you have? Following up from our last meeting, or do you have that report?" Right, like taking that time
Straight to
to,
the business.
yeah, yeah, not going straight to the, taking that time. How was your weekend? I know you went and did X, Y, Z, and so to try to build those commonalities because
Totally.
we're
Online,
our
this is very
calendars are
important.
packed. Yeah,
Mm,
yeah.
mm. A small talk, yeah. Hmm. All right, very good. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. Now that you say, like the reality of in office and the online world, what else apart from this small talk and building relationship and trust, have you found out that is very effective to build this long-term relationship and trust, Kevin?
Yes, I think it is very effective if done intentionally.
Mm,
So allowing people, I believe in trust is the foundation for everything. And so when you
mm-hmm,
have clear expectations and clear accountability, I trust you to do that. And same, my any boss I've had trusts me to do that. Then there allows that flexibility for work-life balance or work-life intertwinedness where you need to go pick up your daughter early or you need to go you have an appointment of some type in the remote world, like it through that accountability and those expectations, you can allow people to do that and have that trust to do that. um, but I think that then there's the really over communicating around in tough situations or tough conversations around performance, over communicating, making sure that you are asking them to repeat what they've heard so that you're hearing things on the same page. I ran into that as a leader a couple times where I thought I had been very clear, and
Mm.
then a couple weeks later the message came back and it was like, well, no, this is how I interpreted you said it, and I was like, that was
It
and that's
happens.
on
It
me.
happens.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and that's on me. So like, what can I do better to? And that's where it's like, all right, can what did you hear me say? How what are the next steps? So asking those follow ups, which is just here's where I need you to go and go do it. So that's something I'm still working on. I probably always
Uh,
will be as a leader,
yeah.
but something I had to learn the hard way.
Very good, very good. They are very interesting. Yeah, I think these expectations and accountability is very important, right? You treat them like adults, like we are all are, and they will take responsibility, and they if they understood, right, what is expected from them, and they will perform it. Very interesting. We have 3 minutes left, Kevin.
Oh wow.
Thank you so much for sharing. It's been great so far. I was wondering, is there anything else that you would like to share that we haven't covered so far, Kevin?
A couple things.
Yes.
First, for anyone out there that's in talent acquisition or anyone that's joining a startup or wants to join a startup, one
Mm-hmm.
thing I learned was build for the future.
Mm-hmm.
And the way I learned this was because I did not. So I was the first recruiter, blank slate of paper to build the function, and so I piecemealed it together and made it work for me individually. But eventually the organization grew and my team grew. We got more recruiters, more requisitions. And so if I had started out earlier of saying, let's imagine that I don't have 4 open recs, I have 40. Let's imagine that's not just me, but 5 other recruiters. How would I build how to manage this, how to track this, how to report on this?
Mm,
That
very good.
would have saved me a lot of time and heartache.
Mm.
Um,
Like
and then
creating systems and processes, right? Is what you mean?
exactly. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Uh-huh.
Um, and then the other one I think we've talked about a little bit is just enjoy the journey.
Mm.
Like is is what is stressing you out today, will you even remember it in 2 weeks, let alone 2 years? And I'm a new father. I've got a 2-year-old daughter, and nothing puts time in perspective of having a kid
Mm.
because you see the developmental and the changes in them on a weekly basis. And so, from a business standpoint, yeah, I'm angry or stressed about this right now. I'm probably not going to remember it in 2 weeks or 2 months, you know?
Uh-huh.
So, what's the big deal? Like,
Yeah,
not
yeah.
saying dismiss it completely, but that's where the mindset and the choice of how to react is I will do this. I will, make
Uh-huh.
this right or fix this, but I don't really want to let it stress me out.
I love that, it shows a lot of emotional maturity because we are in less roller coaster of emotional ups and downs, right? And it's more equanimity and more balance in our lives. Love it, love it. Thank you. And, my last question will be if you could leave a big message to the whole world, Kevin, anything you want, what will you say?
Leave a message to the whole world.
Yes.
I would say it's been a privilege.
Is what,
It's
sorry?
been it's been a privilege.
It's been a privilege. Eh?
It's been just in everything, the relationships I have with coworkers, friends, family, um, the work I get to do every day, the people I interact with, the results and the goals that we've accomplished and how we've grown. It's I feel very privileged.
I love it. Thank you so much. That was a beautiful message. I'm very grateful to having met you, Kevin. And yes, from my side is just grateful. Also, it's been a privilege as well. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you, Yoshi.
All right. See you now. See you now. Thank
Bye.
you. Bye bye.